Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a real treat here to SportsWire Radio and the news report. And I don't do these too often, but this one I wanted to do for a number of different reasons because I've gotten a chance to follow what she does here for the good people of the Bronx as a community advocate. She is a tireless leader. I see her all over the place talking about a number of different issues that are going on, especially with public safety and community rights and all different types of things. And she has definitely been a strong leader, a strong person to speak with on these issues. She knows what's going on. She ran last year for the city council in the 17th district in the Bronx. And we're happy to have her on here finally. And without further ado, here on the news report, the number one global news show, community advocate, Lattina. Latina, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate you reaching out. It's an honor to be on your show. Your show is very entertaining. It's informative. And I'm happy that I have a lot of supporters and followers who watch what I do in the community, what I do for the community, and the work that I'm currently doing as an active community advocate in the community. So thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. It is a tremendous honor. And obviously, I followed your work for quite a while, and I got first familiar with it around almost about a year and a half or so ago when you were looking to take those steps to run in the 17th Council District in the Bronx. You were running under the Common Sense umbrella with the likes of Tony Herbert, who ran for public advocate,
Yes.
a number of different people. So that's where I first got familiar with you. But Latina, for those who might be watching this for the first time here on SportsWire Radio and may not be familiar with Latina Brown, set the tables for us and what got you involved in your community and being a community advocate.
Well, first and foremost, a lot of people know me as Brown for the Bronx.
Okay.
Because I have my channel, and I know a lot of people are in tune with my videos, and I'm pretty sure you've seen some of my videos.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
And my postings. So I have been a community advocate for over 10 years now. What made me become more involved in the community was, of course, the increase of gun violence, gang violence. Of course, public safety is like a number one issue. It's always been a number one issue for numerous amounts of years. And then secondly, we have housing crisis, homelessness, and the mental health. And I live in an area that's, it's ranked as the poorest, and I'm not proud of it. It's ranked as the poorest district in New York State.
Wow.
And New York, you can look it up. It's a fact. I live in the Congressional District 15, which is Congressman Richie Torres' district.
Sure.
And before that, it was Jose Serrano. The Bronx continues to be the forgotten borough. So when you're living in a environment where it's where it's like plagued with gun violence and gang violence, and a lot of developers that's building up these buildings into the community and basically neglecting it, it starts to take an effect on you mentally. And it can also take a toll on the seniors. I live in a district that's mostly composed of single households, which is single moms running their households, disabled families. It's the most polluted district in the Bronx in New York County. And I just said, well, why do we have these ineffective leaders in office? What are they doing for us? What are we gaining by voting for the same individuals in office? Nothing. All we're getting from these elected officials are bags of potatoes, broken promises, high rent, lack of jobs, and methadone clinics that continues to saturate the district. So District 17 is it has like an income level of $22,000 for a family of four. And I hate to see, it bothers me to see families continue to receive repackaged welfare from ineffective leaders and not given an opportunity to advance in life, to pass something down to their children. So that's what prompted me to run for office, because I cannot continue to turn a blind eye and fail our children, because our children are the future. So that's what prompted me.
It's so interesting because obviously when you follow politics here in New York, the Speaker of the State Assembly is Carl Heastie, and he comes from the Bronx. So you'd automatically think that if the Speaker of the State Assembly comes from the Bronx, he would do more maybe to help not only his district, but also the surrounding areas like yours. And you talk about the politicians, and obviously the Bronx is definitely a power base for the Democratic Party. And obviously the Bronx is overwhelmingly registered Democrat in that sense. And obviously you talked about some of the things about income and people at disadvantages. So why has that happened then with all the power that's in the Bronx, all these prolific leaders like Carl Heastie as an example? Why has this continued? I would almost think that, let's say, if I was the Speaker of the State Assembly from the Bronx, I would maybe look to do more to help those who might need that helping hand in creating jobs and making a better life for them and especially their family.
So to be honest with you, I'm going to be very honest with you, Mr. Bryce.
Sure.
And I don't know if it's, I don't want to put your show and any issues or problems with the elected officials. But I'm going to be respectful with my response.
Sure.
I think that the reason why they continue to leave this area neglected with just crimes and filled with gang violence is because they want to gentrify the community. They cater more to real estate developers and less about the people. This is about them wanting to push out longtime renters out of the community, upstate, out of state, so that developers can come in, build up these expensive developments and basically charge market rate for these apartments. This area has a very high volume of immigrants. In my district, we have the highest populations of Dominicans, Garifunas, and Africans who are uneducated about politics, about local and state elections. They don't know their rights. They don't know what they can and cannot do because this information is not being shared with them. So this is more about, the elected officials holding on to power. When you're running in a poor district, it's like a gold mine for politicians because that's where the money is at. Like when you build a methadone clinic and you put it into these communities, that's fundings, right? That's automatic money. The more shelters you build, that's more money from the state side. So they're putting all these programs into these shelters and homeless, shelters and methadone clinics into the community, and it doesn't benefit us. This is a tight-knit community.
Single family household, as you mentioned.
Exactly. And then our children are being exposed to this stuff. So when you go outside with your son or your daughter, with your mom, you're automatically exposed to an addict who's shooting up, passed out on the staircase in front of your building. So this is more of them wanting to push us out and gentrify the area and continue this cycle of repackaged welfare.
It almost reminds me of some of those old documentaries I saw. There was one I saw sort of on the invention of graffiti, and it showed a lot of the different subway stations. And obviously the Bronx was shown. This is like the 1970s, maybe early 1980s. So let me get your thoughts on this, Lattina, because obviously I come from Staten Island and I don't know as much about the Bronx. I know the Bronx, but you know the Bronx a lot better than I would. Has the Bronx changed then since the 70s and the 80s, when we saw obviously then President Jimmy Carter tour the Bronx and we saw all those vacant buildings and we saw all the people in broad daylight, and it was almost like a Charles Bronson movie, Death Wish. It literally was. I mean, you're telling me things haven't gotten that much better? I mean, talk to me.
Well, it's gotten a little better, but it's
not to the way we need it.
Exactly. So it's like you can go to Manhattan, right?
Okay.
Or to Staten Island or to Queens, and you'll see the difference between the boroughs, right?
Yep.
I've heard people say that when they go to the Bronx, it looks like World War III, because you see a difference in like overall with the way the environment looks, the apartments, the lack of greenery in the Bronx. Like, you have greenery in Staten Island. You have, fresh air out there. We don't have that. Like, it's polluted. We have the highest rate of asthma in this district, the highest rate of heart disease, lung disease, COPD. It's a fact. Like, this is all factual information. So I think that there's room for improvement, but I also feel like they're holding back. Like, we keep hearing the same thing over and over again, every election. Oh yeah, we're going to fight to do, X, Y, and Z for you guys. We just need you to put your name on our petition and make sure you vote for us. And we continue to fall for the same shenanigans. And it's like, well, when are we going to start holding ourselves accountable?
It sounds very similar to what Tony Herbert said to us when he came on the air last year, when he was running for public advocate. Obviously, he was running for citywide office, and you were obviously out there in the Bronx and such. So I almost, in a positive light, to try to bring it in a positive light to what you do, how have maybe you used your position as somebody that is a community advocate? And I see you all the time on social media. You even tag me on some stuff where you talk about all these different issues that impact the Bronx, like, let's say, bail reform or public safety or the homeless shelters and even the methadone clinics. And I was even listening to something. There's a new radio station called The Block 94.3, and they run sometimes kind of like syndicated shows on Sunday mornings. And as I was working, they talked about this issues in communities like yours that you see methadone clinics pop up, and most people in those communities actually aren't for it. And the problem is that the communities like yours, they're not advocating enough against it. But in a positive spin, how have you been able to use your position as a community advocate maybe to help the people in your community?
Well, so I advocate behind the scenes and of course publicly, but I've sat down with an elected official to discuss my concerns, a state elected official, about, bail reform. I'm not saying that bail reform is, something that we need to scrap, but I think that we need to revise it because it is not helping communities like mine. For instance, the South Bronx, Hunts Point area, we have a lot of gun violence. We have a lot of, sexual assaults, robberies. Like, I want my tenants, because I'm a tenant leader here at the building.
Okay.
So here at my building, in my development, we have over 600 tenants. I'm one person that they depend on. And I'm also a community partner. I work side by side with, law enforcement to try to, educate our residents in the community about what's happening in the community, what meetings are going to be held in the community, just to try to bring all of us together. But our residents do not feel safe. I've seen residents running home before 5 o'clock because they're afraid of what's going to happen. They're afraid of a stray bullet hitting them or someone coming out to rob, their sons, their daughters. It's a big concern. So bail reform needs to be tweaked. It was rushed. It was put together. No one thought to read the fine print. Everybody was like, yeah, keep bail reform. It works. It works. No, you need to revise it. Look in between the lines and see what works for the Black and Brown community, especially communities that's impoverished, like Congressional District 15, City Council District 17. So there needs to be some changes. And as far as the methadone clinics, big mistake. I've seen methadone clinics literally built right next to schools, churches, local markets. That is a no-no. We do not want to see it. Why are you encouraging more of our people? I mean, all people who live in poor communities to push drugs into their system instead of helping them. We should be rehabilitating them. We should be using that money to get people cleaned, get them rehabilitated into programs and working. Like, what are we doing here? It's the same, once again, recycled policies, and just it's impacting us in a very negative way.
No question about it. And I full disclosure, was working on a campaign. We were talking about this off the air, and it was also a Democratic candidate, Steven Saperstein, in his district at the time, they wanted to put a homeless shelter nearby a school and such. And the community just got all up in arms. And obviously the elected officials heard it and the project was scuttled. And I would hope that some of these things in Congressional District 15 and certainly Council District 17 would also get that same response. But these are also reasons why you need to follow Lattina Brown on Instagram at Brown for the Bronx. Also like her page on Facebook, Brown for the Bronx. Also follow her on Twitter at Lattina Brown, because something tells me she's going to be fighting hard. She's going to be out there with that bullhorn, and she's going to make sure that the people of the Bronx have a voice and a community advocate. It is a tremendous honor to have her here on the News Report. And I am the host of the News Report and the station manager here of Sports Wire Radio, the Reverend Tom Rice. And I want to talk about bail reform, Lattina, because the word reform always sounds good, right? When reform, anybody talks about reform, it always sounds positive. And I think originally 3 years ago, when we talked about bail reform, maybe there was some good intentions to it. I even heard the other day Governor Cuomo ironically talk about that some of these things that, and looking in retrospect, shouldn't have happened. But especially for a district like yours, because let's be honest, where I live, I'm in Staten Island. I'm in relatively a safe neighborhood. Bail reform, it impacts us only so much. But where you are, it's almost belly of the beast. But you also do have a history where, in a sense, and I think rightfully so, the community maybe have felt some distrust with the police. There have been a number of issues that have gone on, and to play catch-22, the police at times with these different communities like yours, maybe they did things that they shouldn't have done. So I'm going to ask you this question, because you would know it much better than me, because you're a community advocate. You're out there. You speak with law enforcement. You speak with people that live or impacted by this issue much more than I would. How do we maybe, almost the expression, thread the needle, where we can maybe keep the idea of reform safe, but also, most importantly, keep people safe?
So that's a very good question, and I appreciate you for asking. So I'm out there, I tell residents in the community, please join a precinct council meeting. I have attended so many precinct council meetings. Do you know, when I mention this to like residents in the community, they have no idea what I'm talking about. They don't even know what a build a block meeting is. I'm pretty sure you've seen my my post on social media. I'm always posting about the next NYPD build a block meeting, precinct council meeting, and people are just not putting themselves out there to get involved. It's like, how can you talk about something that you know nothing about if you're not involved or active in your own community? And the second part to your question, holding NYPD accountable. You got to keep in mind, there's a new administration in place now. We have a new face. We have new faces of law enforcement, right? And the new faces of law enforcement is Generation Z. That's the younger generation. We're talking about young people in their 20s who are looking to break the cycle that we have going on now with the community not trusting law enforcement. They're trying to break away from that. They want to service their community. They want to make a difference. So we gotta, start working with them. We cannot lump up all law enforcement into one category, because we don't want to have another situation like our two fallen officers, God rest their souls, Detective, Jason Rivera and William Mora, who lost their life. They're from Generation Z. So we're going to penalize young people for wanting to make a difference if they decide to become a cop or a corrections officer, or decide to join the Marines or become, part of or join the military. We have to lead by example. We need to start listening to them. We need to start going to these meetings.
Absolutely. I definitely think that community involvement and bringing everybody to the table, whether it's also faith leaders, whether it's community advocates like yourself and law enforcement directly, I think definitely helps. And it's kind of important to note that there are people out there that are now coming from places like the Bronx and, let's say, Queens and parts of Brooklyn that are in law enforcement, and that they generally do want to serve the community. As somebody that went to John Jay College, I saw that firsthand, so I could certainly appreciate some of those things. And I'm also curious, Lattina, on what are some of the most important issues? We talked about law enforcement and public safety, and obviously that's going to be the topic of the day for sure. But what are some other issues that are important to your community that you try to work upon?
Well, I know that theft is another issue due to food insecurities. So we have a lot of residents who are unable to feed their families because they don't have enough money. So they've been stealing from the local markets and Rite Aid and other pharmacies and bodegas because, food insecurity is a serious issue. And I don't think that a person should be punished for trying to, take care of their families, trying to put food on the table. I think that more resources need to be made available for communities like mine. And I also think that people need to be paid a decent salary. It's ridiculous. Now you have people making below minimum wage,
Are you
barely
about
making ends meet.
$22,000 was the average income in your district? I mean,
Yes,
that's
and
how
they're
could
struggling.
anybody? Yeah, you know what? You think about it, $22,000 and a family of four. I mean, Latina, I don't know how you'd be alive. I mean, that's pretty sad. In the United States of America, we're supposed to
Yes,
be the greatest country, right? We're supposed to have all these resources, all this wealth, and we have your district in particular with an income of $22,000 on a family of four. I mean, I could never fathom that.
it's terrible. It's terrible the way these are people. These are human beings who are being treated this way, and it's like they continue to tell them, hey, well, we need you to, if you want to be on this program, right? This what do you call it, FEPS and SEPs and all these other programs,
Yep.
you cannot go above a certain amount in income because the government is going to stop taking care of you. You are holding them back. That's like you're saying that you have to depend on us. You got to keep voting for us so we can keep pacifying you. That doesn't help. It doesn't help. It's just a band-aid. It's nothing but a band-aid on a wound that's been cut deep and it's been festering for over years and years of voting these people into office and them just continue to just push out this candy that's like it's like a piece of candy that you're feeding a child until their teeth becomes rotten because it's not good for you. It's not. It's not. I think it's
Latina,
ridiculous.
that's like me and the big gulps. I can't help having a big gulp because I'm always tired throughout the day.
Yeah, and it's like back to what Mr. Tony Herbert said. It's like,
Yep.
these people want to continue to be, on the system, pacified by the government. It's like you're depending on them.
That's what he said in his book. Listen, I remember reading Tony's book, and a
I
lot
read
of
his
what
book
you're
too.
saying, I could definitely see why you were in his coalition and why you were running underneath him, because a lot of what you're saying to us was very similar to what Tony said a year ago. And it just, again, to me, it's so hard to fathom, Latina, that we're in 2022 and we have people, especially again in the United States of America, and especially in New York City, with all the resources, all the wealth that we have, that they're only living on $22,000 a year, and they're either single mothers or they have 2 and 3 kids or whatever it might be. And to be able to, I don't know how they do it. I mean, listen, my heart goes out to everybody in your community, in your district, and it makes, I think, me feel a little bit more grateful for some of the things that I have here. And it almost leads me then into, I know that you've obviously run for office and such, and I think in a lot of ways you seem like a natural fit for it. I mean, you know the issues, and we'll talk about maybe some more of those in a little while. I mean, what did you learn from that experience in running for the city council last year under, I know, Tony Slate and such? And talk to me about those experiences.
Well, I have to say that it was a very interesting campaign. It did give me a lot of exposure. I got a lot of support from people in my district, outside of the district, outside of the borough, outside of the state, which is a huge blessing for me. However, I did not get that support from the Democratic Party. That would be, of course, the chairman, Jamal Bailey, Carl Hasty, and all the other, known elected officials. They were not happy that I was running on a slate to fight for the people. Basically, I wanted to give the community back to the residents because I want them to have a chance to succeed. I want them to have a chance at success. I want the children to have, a generational wealth, something that they can pass on to their children. And they didn't like that. It was like I was upsetting the establishment. So when they found out that I was running on Tony Herbert's slate, they had me illegally kicked off the ballot and didn't touch Tony because nobody wants to mess with Tony.
Yeah, Tony's been running a long time. Tony's been in the political game for a very, very, very long time. I mean, he knows his stuff.
Yes. And, so we went through this whole process with the Board of Elections and the hearings. My attorney at the time was representing me. And, I felt like the campaign was being sabotaged. There was a lot of people that claimed that they were, supporting me and that they were working with me. And, they turn around and they sabotage your campaign because that's what they do when they feel like you are a threat to the establishment and to their pockets. This is what happens. This is the game. So it's like, if you don't play their game, they're going to come after you. They're going to say some not so nice things about you. And that's happened to me more than one time. Trust me, I've been harassed on a daily basis just for running for office, which is my right. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a constituent. I'm an advocate. I'm a working mom. I'm an educated mom. I have the right to run. This is supposed to be a free democracy, right? Obviously, that's not the case out here in the Bronx.
Oh, especially with the Board of Elections when it comes to submitting petitions and that
Yes.
whole slate there. And the Board of Elections is the one agency. And again, you're talking to somebody that has helped almost every candidate from every different political party in this state and city. So I know how these things work, and I know the shenanigans at the Board of Elections and how, frankly, Democrats and Republicans control the Board of Elections and control it in a way that only a select number of candidates are able to get on the ballot. And if you don't have the resources, and if you don't have the resources to be able to stay on the ballot and such, or get a certain number of petitions, it certainly becomes a very, very difficult process. And I've always said one of the most arcane things left. And frankly, this state, maybe even this country, is running for office in New York. And Mayor Michael Bloomberg, one of the things that I strongly agreed with him on once, and he said this a long, long time ago, and he had said this after he left the Republican Party, and it really resonated with me. He wanted to change the Board of Elections to a nonpartisan agency, basically where you had to take a test, and not like the way it is now, where the party leaders put in who they want at the board, and to make sure that they can control and basically pull the strings. And that's the only way the Board of Elections will ever change. Nobody will ever change that system and until that changes. So it is my hope that candidates like yourself don't have to go through that process again. And I know that it will be different the next time, if there is a next time. But you also still got to run, though, in November of last year's elections under the Black Women Lead Party. And I think that's pretty important to note, because it's still also very difficult to get signatures to do an independent nominating petition. That is a very hard, it is a very arduous process, especially to do it in a COVID year, because I can tell you, Lattina, I was out there door to door last year during COVID getting petition signatures in a Democratic primary in my own right. And that was something that was very, very Byzantine and a very difficult process. But talk about what that was like, still being able to run under the Black Women Lead Party.
Oh, that was very interesting. After that whole, process with the Board of Elections and the legal kickoff in June, I started to take a step back and I said, well, maybe this is not what God has planned for me. Maybe I'm not meant to be on the ballot. Maybe this is not what the people want. And I was gonna, just take a step back and just wait until 2024 to run again and kind of like rebuild from there and just continue to do the work. And a candidate that ran for mayor inspired me, and she literally encouraged me to run as a independent candidate. She said, don't let all of your hard work go to waste. Her name is Joycelyn Taylor.
Sure.
I don't know if she's amazing. And, I tip my hat off to her because she reached out to me. She checked in on me and she told me, don't give up. She's like, continue the fight. You work so hard. Don't let them tell you that you're not good enough to run, that you're not good enough to lead your community. And she came out with me. I was on her slate. We went out together to collect signatures. She said, I don't care, Lattina, if I don't make it on the ballot. As long as you get on the ballot, you get yourself on that ballot and you run hard, you run your campaign. And I made it on the ballot. Unfortunately, she did not make it on the ballot, but she was just so happy to see my name on the ballot. And I just have to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to Miss Joycelyn Taylor for believing in me and for inspiring me to continue on with my campaign.
Well, we want to give her a huge shout out. And obviously, again, sometimes in those races, if you're a citywide candidate, you can help a candidate like Lattina be able to still get out there and have a message. And those are reasons why we want everybody to go to latinabrown.com. Also, please follow her on Instagram at Brown for the Bronx. Also, Twitter, Lattina Brown. Also, please like her Facebook page at Brown for the Bronx, because this is what a community advocate should be like. And I am the host of the News Report and the Sports Report, the station manager here of SportsWire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And if you like what you hear from us on SportsWire Radio, do give us a like on Facebook at SportsWire Radio. And 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you can listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/player. And also, want to make an announcement here because I forgot to do it a few days ago. I will actually be a guest on a show for SportsWire Radio this coming Saturday. It's a little bit less serious than what we're talking about here, and that is obviously a work in progress show because, well, WrestleMania is the following week, and we do a lot of wrestling, obviously, overseas, and I want to thank, obviously, the guys Piles and the Mayor of Canton for giving me this opportunity, so I will be a guest there on the Work in Progress show coming this Saturday night. So I'm looking forward to speaking with the guys, and we'll be watching, I think, an old episode of WWF Superstars. So if you want to forget a little bit what's going on here in the world, whether it's with the bail reform, whether it's what's going on with gas prices or Ukraine, you can just check me out on Twitter at Thomas Bryce 2017. And of course, AWIPOD on Twitter as well. You can watch the show and they'll stream it also, and we'll play it on sportnarium.com/player. So I want to thank again the guys Piles and the Mayor of Canton. So be on the lookout for that. We are talking all things related here to community advocate Lattina Brown, of course, candidate last year for the 17th Council District in the Bronx, the fighting Bronx, obviously. It is not just about the Yankees in the Bronx. Lattina Brown
Rumble in the Bronx.
Rumble in the Bronx, and I'm trying to think, was that the Jackie Chan movie? I'm trying to think of the Jackie Chan movie that I was most, I always did like that. I don't get much sleep, so I watch a lot of these old movies, so I could certainly see that, and something tells me that Lattina Brown's definitely got a lot of Jackie Chan in her, to say the least. But I was also curious about this Lattina because last year I did interview a number of different city council candidates in addition to Tony that were running in the Democratic primaries. I think I had one Republican candidate on, so I tried to get everybody in. But I was curious now that COVID, I guess to an extent, is subsided, but how do you feel COVID in terms of everything that went down impacted your district? Because I remember hearing over and over about how the COVID vaccine numbers were lower in, let's say, maybe your district and certainly my district. And I could see why in my district, because there's a lot of people that are probably Republican and they probably for political reasons. But I was curious in terms of COVID and such, how is your district impacted by all the different mandates and the regulations and everything else? And just your overall thoughts on that.
So the vaccine, the mobile vaccine trucks, we did not have mobile vaccine trucks available on a regular basis in the community.
Okay.
I know this for a fact because I've had a lot of seniors and disabled people reach out to me about where can they, are they doing in-home vaccinations? Are there mobile vans in the area? Once again, we're always left out. Like they'll have like a mobile van over by Morrison Soundview Avenue, the nicer area, a little bit nicer.
Sure.
They'll have, a mobile van, on the other side of the Bronx, but we're just like, how do we transport seniors and disabled people to these mobile vans and to these vaccination sites? Because we had literally one center that was doing the vaccinations in the beginning. And this was at an urban health clinic. And they ran out of vaccinations. Like it's lack of resources, lack of regard for human life, lack of regard for the people that have to live in this district that's basically, you know, overlooked. And then you have the businesses. A lot of businesses shut down. I've also posted videos about the businesses that were shut down on
I
Southern
saw a bunch of
Boulevard.
those. Saw a bunch of those.
Yes. And you know, you had different companies that came in and basically set up shop, and the small mom and pop shops are gone. Like nothing left. Then you have so you have like the PCR testings, which was supposed to be made available in our community. We have a population of well over 100,000 people in this district.
Sure. A council district in itself usually has about 160,000 people, so I could see that.
Exactly. In an area like this that has like the highest population of immigrants, we have some who are undocumented. You would think that the elected official would put at least 4 or 5 mobile testing vans in this area. This is a very dense, large population. So that was like some of the issues that we were facing. We had a lot of people who were facing unemployment. People were struggling to find jobs just to try to take care of their families. And then there were issues with the programs that they were receiving. The rental assistance program, they were like backlogged on rent, submitting payments to the landlords for the tenants' rent. Most of the tenants were like faced with eviction letters because they didn't know what to do. It's like it's been a very tough 2 years for us. It's been pretty rough.
Yeah, I figured it would be a little bit more tougher, let's say for your district versus some others, and just kind of getting a sense on that. I know that the rental assistance issue was something I would deal with it when we were working with Steve, and we would speak with people on the phone and such, and we would try to help them. But I would figure in your council district, it would be magnified much more than in a South Brooklyn district that's Brighton Beach and Sheepshead Bay and Manhattan Beach. I mean, certainly I could see all that being magnified and some in your district. And then that kind of piggybacks me to small businesses, because one of the lifelines, I think, in a lot of ways to get people eventually out of poverty and to be able to represent their community is to have a small business. And obviously everybody knows that having a small business in New York City, I mean, we've been crushed by so many different things, whether it's fines, fees, regulations. And I mean, I don't know how anybody does it here, especially in your district with small businesses and such. I mean, what do you think would be the solution in terms of maybe helping out your community, and especially, I think, the city at large, especially with that we have a 7.6% unemployment rate, I had read the other day, and helping small businesses? I mean, what are some of the things that you'd like to see maybe in terms of helping small businesses?
Well, for starters, they need to send them more pandemic assistance funds. I think that the amount that they sent them is just not enough. You know, sending $25,000 is not, it's not going to cut it. I think small businesses, and the money is there. The money is there. They should each receive at least $100,000 per business, because you have, you know, you have the operation costs, the administrative costs, like all of these things cost money. And then you have the taxes, property taxes. So I think that the small businesses, they got pretty much the short end of the stick. And I don't think that this was, I think it was done intentionally to let corporations like Amazon step in and take over. I think that's always been the plan from the very beginning. When you look at the communities now, our small mom and pop shops, they no longer exist. These are businesses that have been here for over 20 plus 30 years now. So where does that leave the community? If you come and take our small businesses away, you're going to push our community out, and we lose the culture. The Bronx will lose its luster. It will no longer be the boogie down Bronx. It's going to be something completely different. So it's like
Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, and obviously the invention of hip hop, it all came from the Bronx. Listen, I mean, we play music on the station all the time. We have live DJs. I mean, I'm all familiar with that. We just had on a couple of basketball players who played in semi-pro for the basketball league, and we were speaking about that with the Bronx and such. And I kind of feel like New York City, in a lot of ways, this is kind of piggyback off that small business issue, where I do feel like gentrification has really harmed New York City in a number of different ways. And I think about communities like yours, because I feel like New York City was always known for its personality. And then we see
Yes.
all these people that are coming in from different places, and then they're almost kind of pushing out different people, and it's changing overnight. And I think in a lot of ways, this gentrification maybe has led to this overnight, maybe radicalism of the Democratic Party, where we see now where it used to be. Listen, Tony Herbert was kind of the norm in the Democratic Party. You were in the
Yeah.
norm in the Democratic Party. Stephen Saperstein, who I worked for, would have been a councilman right now. I mean, there's a number of different people. I mean, there's a few exceptions out there, but by and large, I do think in some way or another, tell me your thoughts on this, because you're out there on the front lines, Lattina. I kind of think gentrification has kind of led to this explosion of the democratic socialist movement here.
I agree with you 100%. Unfortunately, the voters, we are too late. We are too late. It's been brewing for a very long time. We should have never allowed for Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn, to become gentrified. It started there. And we just said, oh, it might be good for the community, not knowing that Harlem was going to be affected by gentrification, because Harlem is no longer Harlem. There's no more culture left. It's been stripped away. And Queens has been, revamped. Bronx is the last. And we thought that we can, turn a blind eye and that the Bronx was untouchable. Not knowing that DSA had their eyes set on the Bronx because this is a gold mine. It's like, wow. Well, the Bronx hasn't been touched. You have so much buildings in the Bronx, abandoned buildings too, and so much money that can be made in the Bronx off of poor people's pain and suffering. And this goes back to what Tony said in the past, and what I'm saying now is that we let it happen. So you have 4 different groups in a Democratic Party fighting for power. You have the progressives, you have the moderates, you have the socialists, and then you have the liberals. They're all fighting with each other. And, people like me and Tony, we don't fit into their agenda. We're the threat to their plans. So they're fighting with each other behind the scenes. So now socialist is now the face of the Democratic Party. So when you see these candidates pushing these agendas, DSA is behind it. They're just as bad as DSA. DSA is paying these candidates to say these things. And of course we're going to suck it up, because they're going to put a black face to say it. They're going to put a brown face to say it. And we're like, oh yes, that's my people. Like, I believe this person's going to really do great for us, not knowing that this person is part of the problem and they're going to gentrify our communities. We fall for it all the time. And it gets to a point where community leaders like myself, we get burnt out. It's like we're talking to a blank wall. It's like, what do you do next? It's like, we can't continue to do. I've done tons of food giveaways with law enforcement, of course, and Tony has been on the front line with me. It's like,
Tony's
I'm
everywhere.
not.
Tony,
Yes,
Tony is everywhere.
And Sammy Ravello.
Yep.
He's a retired law enforcement, amazing person. We've been out here doing the work. TBS New Direction, they've been out there on the front lines with me. They're a former reform gang. We've been doing the work, but it's like, how much more do you expect us to do if you guys continue to vote for the same people? I don't even know what to say to you, Mr. Bryce.
Well, listen, I kind of knew the answer, and unfortunately, you kind of hit the nail on the head that unfortunately we may be a little too late when it comes to this, because when you think about the DSA, I mean, they've got an organization that in a lot of ways is bigger than the Democratic Party machine, because the Democratic Party machine hangs on to power really because in part of the Board of Elections. But the DSA, what they have is they have boots on the ground. They have resources. They get people that come into these different communities, whether it's like Bushwick or Bedford-Stuyvesant, or whether it's Harlem, or whether it's in places like the Bronx, and they're able to go in there, and certainly Queens as well, and to be able to get a team and get them in there very quickly, and they're able to just have the foot soldiers and the resources to be able to win these seats. That's why they're picking off city council seats. They're picking off state senate seats. They're picking off assembly seats. And that's kind of why we have this friction right now where we need to maybe change some of these policies when it comes to bail reform. But the Democrats right now almost can't get their act in place. And it's my hope that eventually we do, because I do think at the end of the day, the Democratic Party was always a little bit more of a bigger tent, I think, than some ways than the Republican Party, but it obviously remains to be seen here. And I wanted to bring this up because obviously I do a lot of work with different CUNY schools and such on the sports end. And I noticed that you were a CUNY graduate, and I was curious on your experiences with that. I try to bring it back to a positive tone here. I always try to do that because I am a reverend, but I did want to talk about that because I, on a personal level, that means a lot, because a lot of my sports following comes from different schools out there in the CUNY, and I wanted to talk about your experiences and how it shaped you as to the person you are in being a CUNY graduate.
Oh, CUNY, they have been amazing. Like, they've been always supportive of everything that I've done in the community, and they continue to be like my support system in what I do now. I graduated from CUNY with a bachelor's in business. The president of the school, the vice president of student affairs, they've all acknowledged the work that I've done. I not too long ago, I think it was like a year ago, we did like a forum, a panel discussion where with other CUNY students, both former and current. And I was on a panel discussion with the current Assemblywoman, Farah Sufat.
Okay.
Forgive me if I butchered her last name.
I butcher names all the time. I do stuff in England all the time, and they have these towns and these names, and you have no idea. And I'm like number one in 4 of these towns in England. So you have no idea that I get messages left and right how I cannot pronunciate towns. So you're in the right place, Lattina, because I'm telling you, it's a running joke. There's one town I still, after 6 months, can't get the pronunciation right. So don't feel too bad.
Well, yeah, she and I, we were both on the same panel discussion, and we were able to connect with a lot of CUNY students. They had a lot of questions for us. It was also a fundraiser too for the CUNY school programs, which I was so happy to be part of, because there's nothing that I wouldn't do for my CUNY school and for my fellow CUNY students. So we talked about everything from the pandemic to politics to mental health, which was like a #1 topic in that panel discussion, because there's a lot of students who are suffering with anxiety and depression because many of them have lost loved ones during the COVID. Some of them are, struggling to pay bills. Some of them are struggling to get meals on the table. So we touched on a lot of like real issues, some things that I can relate to as well. And believe it or not, a lot of the students, they said that I inspire them when we keep in touch. And I've told them that, hey, if you ever need someone to talk to, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here on social media. I'm active. Reach out to me if you need some advice. So it was a very wonderful experience for me. I don't regret it. And, I encourage everybody to go to CUNY. Education is so important. And that's something that I continue to fight for, especially in my district. It's important.
Absolutely. I always feel that, especially for anybody, and especially in a district like yours with 17 council district, 15 congressional district, I guess it was a 36 senatorial district, whatever else is out there in the district names, getting an education, especially going to where you can get one at CUNY, whether it's at Baruch or whether it's at Hunter or John Jay or Medgar Evers or York or any other in the CUNY schools, it could help you in the long run. And I think also the support system that you get from CUNY is going to be second to none. And that's why I can certainly see why some of those things. And listen, when I went to school in CUNY, as I mentioned, I went to John Jay. Anxiety and depression were definitely big issues then, and certainly they're even more magnified now because of COVID. And students didn't get to see each other. There wasn't classroom settings for a long time, and it's very, very difficult. And I know that our professors, whether they're adjuncts or term professors, they really do a lot for these different students, and I want to recognize all of them. And we've got about another 5 or 10 more minutes with Lattina Brown. I want to make sure everybody goes to latinabrown.com to get more information on it, because this woman is a superstar. Let me tell you something. She is a world champion. I mean, we speak about wrestlers all the time, whether it's Becky Lynch or Bianca Belair and Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey. I put Lattina any day of the week over them for sure, to say the least. She is doing a phenomenal job. You also most certainly want to follow her on Instagram at Brown for the Bronx. Also Twitter, Lattina Brown. Also, please like her Facebook page. And certainly it is an honor to have her on. I've been waiting for this for a while, so very, very excited. And I am, again, the host of the News Report and the Sports Report here, the station manager of Sports Wire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. Lattina, I want to ask you this question, and you can answer it any different way. And what are your goals for 2022?
For 2022, I am going to continue my advocacy work. I am currently working on so I am part of a PAC. It's a Common Sense PAC.
Okay.
It's called One City Rising. You're more than welcome. Everybody, you're more than welcome to check us out on Twitter, Facebook. It's a coalition with the 5 boroughs, including Staten Island.
Okay.
With community leaders, candidates who are coming together so that we can endorse candidates for both local, state, and congressional races, regardless if they're Democrats, Republicans, liberals, Green Party, whatever. As long as they share the same platforms that we share, which is public safety, we want to get behind that candidate and basically flip the seats and rid the city of socialism. So we are building this coalition. We're going to have a launch very soon. I'll send you an invitation for that
Yes.
launch party, Mr. Bryce, and we're going to have coverage and everything for that event. So that's one of the projects that I'm working on. And then I'm also working on other projects, which is working with community leaders and law enforcement to do public safety dinners in the Bronx, and hopefully extend it out to other areas to basically rebuild the community partnership with law enforcement. So that's one of my primary focus. And then I am hoping to maybe possibly look for another run for city council in 2024, because with redistricting and the census reportings, 2024, all city council members have to run for office again, and the incumbent will no longer be running for the seat because he will be termed out. So of course, the party is going to have a hand in picking the candidate. And that's another thing, voters, we have to stop letting the party pick our leaders to represent our districts, because it's technically robbing you of an opportunity to vote for the candidate or the leaders of your choosing. And I'm also working with Sal Albanese. I don't know if you know who he is.
We know he is very well. We know he's a former councilman. He was obviously out there. I was rooting for him. He ran for the city council, obviously not in my district, but he was running in the next one. I'm actually in the North Shore district that's represented by Camilla Hanks, but he was running in a what they call the Mid Island district, and he was running against a Republican and a conservative, and there was a whole snagful with the 2 Republican candidates on absentee ballots, and it looked like maybe Mr. Albanese had a shot there, but unfortunately, what they would call the red wave, I think, kind of swept him out of there, unfortunately.
Well, I have the pleasure of working with Mr. Albanese, who's a very, very wonderful strategic thinker.
Yes.
So he's working on a project called Open Primaries.
I saw that with Forward New York and Andrew Yang. Am I correct in saying that Andrew Yang is involved in that to some extent? Okay.
No, this is Sal Albanese's project. We would love to have Mr. Andrew Yang endorse Mr. Albanese's initiative, but the open primaries, I think, would give us a better chance at voting for the right leaders without having the party pick the leaders for us. So,
and we have it in other places. I think New Hampshire has it. South Carolina has it. I think Iowa has it, maybe. So there's a number of states that have it out there. So, I mean, I think that would certainly give more people the opportunity to participate, because if you look at primary participation from voters, it's only generally between like
Democrats.
18%. Yeah, it's only like 18%.
Low voter turnout.
Listen, in the race I was in, I think the primary turnout before the ranked choice voting was like 18%. The average citywide is like 24, 23%. I mean, that's nothing. That means only a handful of voters are selecting who's going to win. So if we had open primaries, that gives people a choice because, there are a lot of unaffiliated voters out there who may not be a Democrat. They may not be a Republican, certainly, but it gives them the chance to be able to go out there and to be able to vote and to have their voice reflected upon. So I definitely think that that's a good idea. I mean, I'm kind of mixed on ranked choice voting. I mean, it helped in the race I was in terms of Mr. Saperstein. He was up 200 votes on election night, but the ranked choice voting actually put us over the top, but it's kind of like an unknown in that. But I think the open primaries, I think, would give voter participation that kind of jolt that we need because, like I said, in these closed door processes between the parties, you're not going to really see the voter rates very high. So I think that anything that can encourage people to be out there, I think is especially very important, especially in a city like this one in New York, because again, if you take a step back, I think there's something like close to 3 million registered Democrats. And if only, let's say 25% vote citywide, that means if, 51 council districts, you're only getting a select number of people that are selecting your next council member. So by and large of these districts, I think I would say maybe 40 of them or 42 of them, the winner comes out of the Democratic primary. So I definitely think that that's a very, very good idea. And it is certainly my hope that that'll happen. And whatever we can do to help with that, Lattina, you can definitely count on me and anything I can do for support for you and anything that you do. And obviously it is a very tremendous honor to have you. And I know you're a very, very busy person. So before to get closing thoughts from you, I wanted to ask, what's the one biggest issue that you want to address right now in 2022 for the Bronx?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. The number one issue right now is public safety. Public safety is the number one issue because you can live in a beautiful home, but when you go outside, you want to feel safe. You want to feel safe going to the market. You want to feel safe going to the train station or the local bus stop. So right now we need to address the issues outdoors because that's so important right now. And then you can catch me next month, April 26th. We will be rallying in Albany against bail reform. Okay. So it's circulating. That's where it starts. You got to start getting out there on the ground, get the movement going. That is my way of contributing to the community and advocating for the needs of the people. So you got to do the work. You can't complain. You got to get your hands dirty. So that's what we're going to be doing. It's going to be me and Sammy Ravello and other communities leaders, the Victims' Rights Council, Patrick McManus. Sure. A lot of people, a lot of hands are on deck. And this movement is growing. Mr. Bryce, you're more than welcome to come out and do a coverage for our rally in Albany. I think that Sammy Ravello, he's going to do a walk marathon.
I think I saw that on Facebook somewhere. I saw that on Facebook.
Yes, so you're more than welcome to come and join us. But that's my number one concern is public safety and just fixing the issues from behind the scenes. So
absolutely no. I think at the end of the day, we're not going to get New York back to the way or as close as to the way that we knew it unless people feel safe. I mean, I know I was speaking with people last year, again, different district than yours, and people were telling me that they didn't feel safe to go to buy a gallon of milk or to put their garbage out. They didn't feel safe. And I can only imagine what it's like in the 17th council district. So I think at the end of the day, in order for us to really get the city and the state back, it has to be about public safety, because all those other things, whether it's small business, whether it's education, whether it's transportation, and all the other issues that impact us here, and there's many of them. There's no question that there are many, many issues that we need to address and fix. Public safety is the number one issue. And I think certainly for Democrats here, you look at 2021, especially in the November elections, the message was people wanted public safety. We saw what happened on Long Island. My race that I was involved in is a walking example of that. Saperstein had the support of the police unions. Sal Albanese had the support of the police unions. We had the support, and we got blown out on election day. So that tells you that Democrats, by and large, are being punished for their
Yes.
lack of support on public safety. So in
Irresponsible.
and that's exactly what it comes down to. Because, like I said, Sal Albanese had the support of every police union. Steve Saperstein had the support of every single police union. And yet in our races, we got blown out by roughly the same margin. So that tells you that people want change. They want bail reform addressed and fixed. And something tells me on April the 26th, Lattina Brown is going to be a big part of why it will be fixed, hopefully before the end of the session here in Albany, which I think is around the 3rd or 4th week in June. So if they don't get it addressed in the budget, which I know is supposed to be due at the end of next week, we certainly hope before the session ends, it will be addressed. Or otherwise, for us Democrats, it could be an ass kicking. Listen, I was speaking to one candidate, and I won't tip my hand on who the candidate was, and he was telling me, he even said that Kathy Hochul should be a little bit worried right now for the general election because of bail reform. I won't say who the candidate was. I won't say where the district, but all I'm going to say is that when I heard that, I was like, even Kathy Hochul, Democrat governor, but that's what he said. And he's very astute. I'm not going to tip my hand on who that was, but we'll certainly see, obviously, and we certainly keep our fingers crossed that things will change for the better. And Lattina Brown is definitely going to be a big part of that. But Lattina, I want to give you the floor. I want to give you some closing thoughts, any social media that you'd like to plug or replug for us. And I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. I've long been a big admirer of yours for a very, very long time. I've always had a big crush on you also. I was talking to you about that off the air, but I do want to give you the floor. I want to give you some closing thoughts. I can't thank you enough for this opportunity, and floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I just want to say to my followers and my true supporters, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I just recently opened up a TikTok account. Yeah, I'm on all social media. I know Facebook, they've been like shadow banning me.
Yeah, I've heard that from different people. I mean, I'm mostly in the sports business, so I haven't really felt any of that, but I've heard from different people that's happened.
Yeah, that's why I'm behaving myself in your show, because I don't want you to get shadow banned. So I just want to say thank you to my supporters for always being there for me, for encouraging me to never give up, and let's continue to fight. I'm not giving up on running for office. I feel like God has a bigger plan for me, and I think that I want to continue to work hard. I want to be known on a national level. I don't think local level's it for me. I think God has bigger plans for me. He wants more for me so that my voice is heard on a bigger platform, which I will strive for. So thank you guys so much. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. And let's see if there's going to be a part 2.
Listen, I'll have part 2, part 3, part 4. You are welcome anytime you want us to. I'll have you on every week. So that is definitely done. That is a given. That is a no problem. Listen, Lattina, let your hearts not be troubled, because a rising tide lifts all boats. That's what John F. Kennedy always said. And I don't know if local plans or what it's cracked up to be, but something tells me you're going to do something really big, something really special, whether that's you being on the big stage or in Washington. I don't know what it'll be, but that might be your path. Listen, you might be a city council person or an assembly person, and that sort of stuff is great, but something tells me with your charisma, your energy, your activism, your heart, and your support for the Bronx, something big is going to be on your way. So listen, there's always roadblocks. Listen, Obama didn't win the first time. Abraham Lincoln lost a bunch of different times. I mean, history is littered with people that lost over and over and over. I mean, so at the end of the day, it's just the first step in the block of many, many roads for you. So I want to thank you and congratulations on all the success. Thank you for all you do for the Bronx and for the communities at large. And we will definitely have many, many more parts with you, my friend.
Thank you so much. You have a good night. Take care.
As we're here on the News Report, the #1 global news show with our superstar, she is definitely our top community advocate. She is definitely like Paul Heyman for Roman Reigns. She is definitely our advocate for the Bronx, and that is Lattina Brown. Brown. As I am the host of the News Report and the Sports Report, the station manager here of Sports Wire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And again, if you like what you hear from Lattina Brown, go to latinabrown.com. Also follow her on Instagram at Brown for the Bronx, Facebook Brown for the Bronx, also Twitter Latina Brown. We will be back here later this week. I want to thank everybody for watching this. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sports Wire Radio as well, the Reverend Tom Bryce. Thank you for watching this.